Hi, everybody. This is the last lecture for the nervous system. This is higher order mental functions, the BBB, the blood-brain barrier, and diseases and SC, okay, which is the spinal cord. So your consciousness, all right, this is a really cool area. So down here where these links are, there's some really good videos on consciousness. I would strongly encourage you to watch those. And uh, consciousness is the simultaneous activity of large areas of the cerebral cortex. So, this is your conscious perception of sensation. It's the voluntary initiation and control of your movement. This is, consciousness, you're processing. There's memory, there's logic, judgment, and it's clinically defined on the continuum that grades behavior in response to stimulus. All right, so if a patient's evaluated, are they alert? Are they lethargic? Where that's like a decrease in alertness, like just kind of slow. Are they in a stupor where they're out of it, but they're not in a coma? Okay, and the coma would be the last one. So they're, not conscious, they're not aware, okay, and they're not able to be aroused. So you can see over here where my mouse is moving around and these bars over here on the top. So normal consciousness, here's your arousal, okay, is high, your awareness is high. Okay, a coma, okay, and you can be put into, a medical coma. You can see that arousal and awareness are all the way at the bottom. The vegetative state, the arousal is high, so maybe, there's the pricking up, like putting a pin on someone's skin or everything, arousal's there, but the awareness that that's going on is low. And if it's minimally conscious state, this is somewhat similar. You can see the awareness is a little bit up there. Uh, and down here, you can see the brain scans. Here's a healthy brain. You can see the activity conscious. And then here's minimally conscious, so you can see that red is going away. And here's the vegetative state. So you can see there's no activity going on. So, being aware of your sensation, but, your awareness, are you voluntary, in making a movement, you're processing, you're creating memories, you can use logic to solve a problem, you have good judgments. Though all of those things make up part of your consciousness. All right, another higher order mental function is your language. All right, so this involves the simultaneous activity of large areas of the cerebral cortex. And there's a video here on this. And some of you might be interested in speech, so you will definitely study the brain and the path of the language. The basal nuclei is deep in the brain. The Broca's area and the Wernicke's area, those are the left side of the posterior association cortex. Those are involved in analyzing incoming word sounds and producing outgoing word sounds and grammatical structures. So your brain is a big part of this. And the brain, like some of you might have had to have speech therapy and because of your tongue, but that is all tied to your brain, the ability to use that tongue correctly as well. Ultimately, your brain controls everything. So what's coming in? What are those sounds coming in? And then what sounds are you going to produce and the grammatical structures as well. Language is also involves corresponding areas of the right hemisphere. So that's going to be your nonverbal language processing. So both, analyzing word sounds and the nonverbal language processing, that's what helps us be able to speak and communicate and interpret different languages. You can know Spanish and then maybe go to Italy and or maybe France. The romantic languages tend to have uh, you know they have a lot of similarities between them. So even if you've learned one language, you might be more familiar. Let's say if you know Spanish, if you go to Italy and they're speaking Italian, you might be able to catch up on some of these because you're able to analyze those word sounds and you're familiar with those. And you can also respond to the nonverbal processing that goes on. Memory. All right, very important in anatomy, right? Harder for some of us. So this is the simultaneous activity of large areas of the cerebral cortex again. All right, so this is how you store and retrieve information. So you can see this uh, diagram here, this flow chart. You can see that there is short-term memory, and you can see that there's sensory memory here. This is about a 1 second. You sense something. Short-term memory, this is your working memory. So this is what a lot of people can struggle with, like, hey, I'm learning something new right now. All right, I'm taking it in, I got to remember it. It's my working memory. Then that's your short-term memory. Okay, this is temporary, but a lot of times this is important to allow you to stay focused and to actually create some long-term memories. Long-term memories obviously is long-term. Okay, there's a limitless capacity to this, and transferring from a short-term memory to a long-term memory is due to an emotional state, something that you're conscious of, uh, rehearsal, repetition. Studies have found that in order for something to stick, you have to learn it 7 times. Some of us are really fast and can remember everything, but 7 times. Sometimes some type of association, and then subconscious or automatic uh, processes. So looking over here, explicit memory, you're conscious, you're aware of it. Maybe it's a repetition. Implicit, unconscious, leading to procedural memory. So, you know how to drive home every day. It's just automatic for you. It's a procedure that's happened. Declarative, facts and events. So long-term memory. So episodic memory, semantic memory, episodic. So you most likely will remember uh, COVID-19. Okay, you remember this point in your time, just like I remember when I was a junior in high school and the tornado wiped out my entire high school except for the brick home side of the stadium. Never forget it. That episode is major. I won't forget this either, but this is going to have a big impact on you, seniors, all the kids. But seniors, your senior year, you'll never forget this. Semantic facts, concepts, memorizing things, repetition. So all of these are part of the long-term memory. Anything emotional, for sure, you guys. You're gonna remember it. Sometimes some of you will be able to block it out, but something emotional you remember. All right, so when you're learning, there are structural changes in your dendrites. There's protein deposits, and your neurotransmitters get released. This video here and is a great one to watch. Please watch these. There's such cool animations, and right now I can't even think of the movie. Inside Out. Inside Out is the movie, and it's so cool how they go through the brain. If you got time, right, watch that movie again while you know you're up or your circadian rhythm is off. I know you guys are probably staying up even later than you normally do. I know I am. So, there's something to watch, relevant to what we are learning. All right, protection of the brain. All right, obviously your skull, but then we want to talk about the meninges. The meninges are membranous coverings that contain CSF. What's the CSF? That's the cerebral spinal fluid. So protection here, you can see we have your skin of your scalp, the periosteum, the bone, all right, and then there's three layers, okay, in the meninges here. You have your dura mater or mater. Okay, this is the thick superficial layer. And you can see it. You can see that right here. Okay. Then, okay, so you can see that right there. The periosteal layer and the meningeal area. Then you have the arachnoid matter. And you can see it looks like a spider web. So you can look at that. You can see it looks webby. That's why it's called the arachnoid matter. All right, so this, in the subdural space, it contains that cerebral spinal fluid. The pia mater is like the deepest layer, and it is the thinnest layer as well. And it is this thin layer. It's almost like if you think of like if you want to tightly cover something with saran wrap, that would be the pia mater. Inflammation of these. Okay, so this is your meninges. This is meningitis, and you guys all had that vaccine before you were senior because they want you guys to have that before you go to college because you're around everybody. There's a higher risk of passing on an infection. If a person gets an epidural, so looking at this bottom diagram here, if a person gets an epidural, you can see the woman here is hunched over, and that's so the doctor can feel the spine, and they're going to feel between the spinous process of the vertebrae so that they inject the needle into that epidural space. You can see that right here. And they're going to put in a narcotic, some type of steroid. This is you hear about this when a woman is pregnant, they're going to have a baby so that they don't have the pain. So the woman, and it's hard because I remember having these, you crunch over, but you got this big belly and it's hard to crunch over. And then it's nerve wracking to know someone's sticking a needle in your back. So that, it's going in the epidural space. And for like having a child, that's going to, numb you so you're not feeling the pain. All right, other protection from the brain is the cerebral spinal fluid. This is formed from blood plasma. It's a watery solution. And it provides buoyancy to the central nervous system's structures. It acts as a water cushion for protection, and it helps nourish the brain and carries chemical signals. So, very important. And down here, you can follow the steps. Like this is more than what we would need to go into, like how it's produced. So, protecting the brain, the BBB, which is the blood-brain barrier. This is a selective barrier, and you can see the difference between the capillaries in general and brain capillaries. All right, so this is a waterline pore here. So you're seeing like this is a capillary wall. Remember, they're extremely thin for gas exchange. In the brain, there are you have your capillaries, and they are surrounded by astrocytes, which are neuroglial cells, right, that you learned about in your tutorials and the lectures. So they're very different. So that's going to help protect. So the blood-brain barrier allows nutrients, glucose, extremely important, sugar, any fat-soluble substances, right? It allows alcohol, nicotine, and anesthetics. All right, but it denies proteins, toxins, most drugs, potassium, and metabolic wastes. All right, so why is this a good thing and why is this a bad thing? So I'm not going to go over that now. That's going to be part of your flip grid. All right, traumatic brain injuries. All right, protect your melons, everybody. A TBI is a traumatic brain injury. Right. Very, very common are concussions. This is the temporary alteration in function. So most of the time, a concussion is from, or any kind of brain injury, I should say, is from, you can see the chart over here. 35% are falls, traffic incidents are next, struck by something or against something. There's 12% unknown, 10% assault, 9% other. All right, the concussion, big, big deal in sports. I don't have it on the screen here. Football's number one. I know hockey's up there. Um, Boxing for sure, right? I never understand why people box. And soccer is up there as well, but I feel like there's another one right now, probably rugby. That I'm forgetting. But uh, CTE is something that is really bad. They followed athletes that play one of these high impact sports that there's a lot of head collisions with. And what's happening is the brain has shrinks over time. It's disturbing, you guys, if you play one of these sports. So you might be fine now and this great athlete and the professional football players, but they have a lot of problems and they can suffer from depression too. Oftentimes, a lot of professional athletes have a hard time dealing with this, as well as not playing their sport anymore as they get older. Um, there's been some suicides associated with this, but it's a combination of factors a lot of times. But it's disturbing. They look at the size of the brain, and the brain makes this protein called the tau protein, and the ventricles, uh, the brain shrinks. And so the frontal lobe is often very much affected with that. All right, so there's different, you know, like levels of concussions. So you guys just be careful. Contusion is permanent damage. Uh, and then subdural hemorrhage, so bleeding into that subdural space. This could result in brainstem damage or death. And then the cerebral edema, the swelling of the brain, so that CTE, that the E stands for encephalopathy, and that's the swelling there from constantly being hit in the brain. So it's like chronic traumatic uh, encephalopathy, and that it's just terrible. Here you can see a healthy versus a classic post-traumatic stress disorder versus a TBI versus both. So here's healthy. I want that to go away. I cannot stand that. So left to right, healthy, classic, classic TBI, and then both. So take care of your melons. Like it says, protect your melons. All right, last slide, everybody. Spinal cord, the body's telecommunication highway. All right, anatomically, where does this start? The foramen magnum. You should know where that is. It ends at L1, L2. Okay, your lumbar, first two lumbar vertebrae. Two-way communication between the brain and the body. It contains the spinal reflex center. So, like you guys know, you're tapped on your knee, you're tapped on your Achilles tendon, your knee. Okay, you extend your leg, your Achilles tendon, your plantar flex, your uh, toe, uh, a reflex. Why do we need them? Okay, for safety, right? To be able to respond quickly. The signal, okay, it does not go all the way to the brain in a reflex. All right, but this spinal cord is part of this. I'm sorry, the spinal reflex center is part of the spinal cord. Okay, how the communication takes place. Just wanted to throw in that reflex there for maybe AP Psych. I don't know if you have to know that. All right, so the vertebrae and the meninges and the cerebral spinal fluid protect your spinal cord. Sometimes you can see up here, a doctor might want to get a sample of your cerebral spinal fluid. And so the spinal tap is done. Okay, look at your spinal cord. So it's taken beyond the end of the spinal cord, so you can see that right here. And, really important, and terrible is if there's a spinal cord injuries, can lead to paralysis, and that depends on where the injury is. All right, guys, that is it.